Outward will always have a special place in my heart. And not because it's necessarily a good game, or because I have an incessant love for action RPGs, or even because I had a particularly fun time playing it. I mean, it is, I do, and I did, but that doesn't really distinguish it from so many of the other games we've talked about on this channel. No, Outward will always have a special place in my heart, because it was the last game I was able to play with my brother before he joined the Air Force and got shipped off very far away. He, a mutual friend of ours, and I would play this game for hours on end, and although it's somewhat painful to think about now, I'm kinda just grateful I was able to do something we all loved one last time before he had to leave to serve his country. I'm proud of him, and I'm glad we were all able to experience a game this great at least one final time together. I say all this because Outward may not sound like the most fun game on the surface. It may not look like it either, and I may even be a little biased in my review of it, but I genuinely still think it's a game that almost anyone could enjoy, especially if they're willing to play it with a friend. Yeah, I'll never forget the time we spent playing Outwards, because Outward is just a complete and total fucking pain in the ass to play. And I sincerely mean that in the best possible way. See, Outward is that rarest of examples, that diamond amidst the coal, the type of game that frustrates you to no goddamn end while still producing inordinate amounts of good old plain fun and immersive gameplay. And that's because Outward tells you absolutely nothing. There's no real tutorial or even much of a narrative pull. It kinda just drops you into its world, gives you a basic debt repayment quest, and then pats you hard on the back, sending you outside the walls of safety and into Mother Nature's harmful bosom, all the while providing you with nary a clue of what you're supposed to do next. You have to eat, sleep, stay warm or cool, and fight alongside your companions to stay alive, sometimes all at once. It's a game filled with spooky dungeons to plunder, powerful enemies to smite, and vast regions to fully explore, but with a very high learning curve and a ridiculously unforgiving attitude towards mistakes. Fuck up just once, and you're gonna be dealing with some serious debuffs that are gonna require crafting, rest, and a lot of careful attention to cure. All because you dodged a millifart too soon, and a 7-foot-tall living mass of fucking bees kicked the back of your forehead in. Can you tell this game has put me through the goddamn ringer? In many ways, Outward evokes the same kinds of challenging sensations that games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls evoked, all whilst still maintaining open world/survival mechanics akin to something like Ark or even Minecraft. And I know that might not sound like a solid game concept at first, but I promise I can explain it in a way that will at least leave you interested. However, before we get into that explanation, I want to ask you guys to like this video because numbers don't lie, and when I ask you guys in the middle of my videos instead of at the end or the beginning, I always tend to get better results. You might want to consider subscribing too, as I have a veritable Spider-Man trilogy's worth of content runtime on my channel, and if you like this video, chances are you're gonna like something else from the vast cornucopia of videos I've produced and topics I've covered. That includes all 3 of the comic books I've either written or helped to produce, which you can read for free on my website, thenightlibrary.net. I built this website from the ground up because I wanted my comics to be free for all of you guys to read, subscribed or not. And if you click the link in the description and check out even one of my comics, well, I would be genuinely touched and honored. Okay, alright, you get it. I appreciate you guys to no end. Let's get back to the video, as I was just about to explain in depth how Outward manages to be a damn near perfect combination of the survival, action-adventure, and dungeon crawling genres. So, Outward takes the aspects of all of these distinctly different genres and blends them almost seamlessly. For example, while fighting, you'll die after 1 or 2 hits. You have to time your attacks, dodges, and blocks perfectly with the enemy's actions, lest you be smushed or rended to bits. Meanwhile, when eating and nourishing your character, your food must be prepared properly with the freshest of ingredients, or you'll get sick and die from disease. And when camping out, you'll need to have someone keeping watch, lest you get ambushed by RNGesus and his merry gang of misfits. None of these mechanics alone are particularly groundbreaking. In fact, there are dozens of games that have been doing these types of things for years, including the games I mentioned in the title of this video, However, combining all of these features and mechanics into one game seamlessly, and then making it all a co-op experience, certainly is. See, there's a good reason all of these different game mechanics mesh so well with each other, and it all has to do with today's key word: challenge. You see, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that games like Dark Souls and Ark are pretty infamous for their difficulty. These are games that take a long time to learn, and an even longer time to beat if beating them is even something that's actually possible. And sure, these games and their mechanics don't really overlap too much. After all, Dark Souls is distinctly not a traditional survival game, lacking the food, thirst, and building mechanics infamous in the genre, and Ark is distinctly not the butt-fuckedly intense kind of action-adventure rollercoaster that is Bloodborne. These games are clearly different and generate challenge in distinctly unique ways. That being said, the mechanics of both of these genres all share one thing in common. They exist to generate challenge, and not just your average challenge either. These games thrive off putting a player through a gauntlet of difficulty so intense and abrasive that it almost guarantees a player is going to have to die several times before they manage to figure out even the most basic of gameplay mechanics. Things like taming, foraging, and exploring in Ark, and, well, just surviving and progressing in Dark Souls. And thus, the beauty of Outward is slowly revealed like a racist relative at a family gathering. And my claim that Outward is both of these games combined and refined becomes a little bit easier to understand. Outward's gameplay works so well because it borrows aspects from all of these genres, and in turn, the mechanics from these genres work so well together despite being from very different games because they generate fun for the player in almost the exact same way, albeit through the execution of different tasks. The fun comes from the challenge, and the challenge is fun because the game is built on a solid foundation that is consistent and fair to the player. Tough but consistent rules, hitboxes, and mechanics are a blessing in games like these. This type of gameplay formula can lead to some really hilarious moments when seemingly mundane tasks or events will have you leaping for joy. Like the time I caught a fish and cooked it over an open fire to save my brother's life from starvation and disease, only seconds before his health bar depleted to 0. It was literally one of the stupidest things I could have possibly cheered for, but in the context of the game, it saved us from having to hike 45 minutes past a giant magical mountain to retrieve all the stuff he would have lost had I not clutched it with the fish. Jeez, I never thought I would say something like that. Then there was the time my buddy Chris was over-encumbered and couldn't move or dodge, so I deftly grabbed his bag and switched the items in his inventory around, filling my bag and pocket appropriately by evenly dispersing his belongings between the two separate inventories, thus allowing us the privilege of keeping all of our hard-fought items whilst only being killed by a magical praying mantis 7 times. Yeah. These events might seem mundane, but they are deceptively comprehensive and incredibly challenging, and thus accomplishing even the smallest of milestones ends up feeling fantastic. Outward makes you proud to accomplish things you'd normally never even have to consider in other games, like the aforementioned pocket-to-weight ratio. Budgeting space in an inventory has always been a key aspect of RPGs, but budgeting space and weight between 2 or sometimes even 3 inventories, and being able to finagle things to make them all fit is a much more novel and challenging concept to be certain, especially when in the midst of combat. However, don't get me wrong, that isn't to say Outward's fun and challenge is relegated to small token victories like these. On the other side of the spectrum, you have your nail-bitingly, butt-clenchingly badass moments like the time my younger brother in turn saved my life from a 12-foot-tall demon with a soul-eating axe who was about to yeet me into oblivion. He used a skillful combination of runes to cast a lightning bolt that saved my life, providing me with just enough of a gap to dodge the demon's foul axe. And when I say he cast a skillful combination of runes, I actually mean skillful, because nowhere in the game, at least to my knowledge, does it ever straight out tell you that casting a simple lantern spell along with a harmless green rune and yellow rune produces a very harmful stream of lightning. He had simply figured it out through trial and error after becoming a runic mage. It's almost like the developers trusted that we as players would be able to figure out the game's mechanics without needing to go through a mind-numbingly boring tutorial. They set up consistent gameplay mechanics and trusted that their player base would discover them and in turn be delighted by their discovery. Each victory, little or big, feels a little bit more personal. Each day survived more substantial, and each dungeon plundered more personally fulfilling. Even the most mundane of tasks becomes exciting to discover and execute because each one opens the game up just a little bit more and makes you feel that much more able to handle whatever the game throws at you. Outward is just filled to the brim with these delightful little figure-it-out-for-yourself kind of moments. For example, there is no recipe restriction in this game, meaning that when I stumbled upon some rare crafting materials and accidentally crafted one of the most powerful swords in the game, now I kinda just had it. And since there's no levels or level caps, I was instantly able to use it. Now, look, I know what you're probably saying. No level system in an RPG? And yeah, to be fair, I was kinda asking myself the same exact question. But it's actually pulled off in a way that works almost too well. Consistent progression and character upgrades are a key aspect of this game, make no doubt, with some incredibly badass skills, abilities, and classes being available to the player. However, instead of gaining experience in conventional ways, your progress is hinged on making money. With that money, you buy better equipment and seek out trainers who can in turn teach you new techniques or magical abilities. Kinda like in the real world. The experience in this game is less an actual number value or point system, and more just kind of you as a human being playing the game, figuring shit out, and in turn becoming more adept with your own controller inputs and practical knowledge. For example, when starting a new game for the very first time, I charged headlong into every single battle I could, which quickly led to me burning away large, semi-permanent chunks of my health and stamina. Since experience isn't really a thing in this game, all I would gain from these engagements was trivial loot that didn't really serve much of a purpose aside from the minuscule monetary value it allowed. Upon my second and third playthroughs, I quickly learned to avoid these enemies and instead play based off of my own set of objectives. Why fight 100 chocobos and bandits when I could make a beeline for the Conflux path, sneak through the dungeon, and unlock magic and spells for my character almost immediately? Everything in the game is do-it-yourself, and nothing goes unconsidered. I mean, shit, you even have to drop your backpack before you get into a fight because the damn thing will slow you down. Outward is just filled to the brim with these delightful little tidbits, gimmicks, mechanics, and features. And getting to slowly figure them out for myself and then share them with my friends made for a truly unique and enjoyable experience. What's more is this game has grown tremendously since I last played it. Since that time, they've released 2 whole new DLCs, including new classes, places to explore, and even a base building mechanic as if to further my comparisons to Ark. Outward is so good because Outward is so hard, but it's a fair kind of hard. The kind of hard that knocks you down on the ground and leaves you dizzy, but then extends a hand out to you and helps you back up, leaving you excited to tackle your adversary with your newfound knowledge of their weaknesses. If you're a fan of RPGs and co-op experiences, then you're missing out by not trying this game. And there's a good chance we might never get anything even close to the kind of game Outward is in the future because it's just a super unique and risky game concept. But the execution is there, the fun is evident, and the unforgettable memories are ready to be forged. All you gotta do is take the plunge into the unknown. And that, well, that is what makes Outward so